Picture this: 400,000 tons of goods moving across 80,000 square miles every single year. No wheels, no horses, no oxen, just human backs. And somehow, they built a system that could go head-to-head with Roman roads. Think about that number for a moment. 400,000 tons. That's the weight of 60 Eiffel Towers, moving every year, through mountains and jungles and swamps. And they did it without the one technology every other empire considered absolutely essential. No wheels, no horses, no oxen, no donkeys, nothing. Just humans, carrying everything, one step at a time. The question isn't whether this should have been possible. The question is how they made it work better than empires that had all those technologies, and what that cost them when everything fell apart. By 1519, the Aztec Empire ruled 5 million people. To put that in perspective, that's bigger than England, bigger than Spain, bigger than every European kingdom except France. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, housed 200,000 residents, making it bigger than London, bigger than Rome, bigger than any city north of the Alps. And here's what they didn't have: wheeled vehicles of any kind. Not carts, not wheelbarrows, not even pottery wheels in most workshops. They knew about circular motion. Children's toys with wheels have been found in archaeological sites, but they never scaled it up. No draft animals either. Europe had horses, oxen, donkeys, camels, depending on the region. China had water buffalo. The Andes had llamas. Mesoamerica had turkeys and dogs. That's it. No bronze or iron. Their cutting tools were made from obsidian, volcanic glass sharper than modern surgical steel, but brittle as window pane. Every empire-building handbook says you need these things. The Aztecs built an empire anyway. And that's just the beginning. Because the real question is, what did they build instead? So how did they do it? What did they build instead? Because the answer isn't just about what they were missing, it's about what they invented to replace it. The specific systems, and I mean specific, down to the distances and weights and numbers that made their empire function. Then we'll look at what those systems cost, because every technology has trade-offs. And at the end, we're going to talk about what happened when those systems met technologies they were never designed to counter. Not because the Aztec systems were primitive, they weren't, but because different engineering solutions create different points of failure. Every empire has a story. Let's find the unexpected twist. The twist here is that the Aztecs succeeded without supposedly essential technologies, right up until the moment those missing technologies killed them. Stay with me. This gets strange. Let's start with the empire at its peak. 1519. Moctezuma II sits in Tenochtitlan. The city itself is an engineering marvel. It's built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, a saltwater lake at 7,000 feet elevation. 3 main causeways connect it to the mainland. The Iztapalapa Causeway to the south, 3 miles long. The Tlacopan Causeway to the west, 2 miles. The Tepeyac Causeway to the north, 2.5 miles. Each causeway is wide enough for 8 men to walk abreast. They include removable wooden bridges at intervals, military choke points that can be pulled up to turn the city into a fortress island. The lake itself is divided by a 10-mile dike built by Nezahualcoyotl in 1449. It separates fresh water from salt water, controls flooding, and creates a massive aquaculture zone. Inside that zone, Chinampas, floating gardens, though they don't actually float. They're artificial islands built by staking out rectangles in the shallow lake, weaving walls of reeds and branches, then piling up mud and lake vegetation until the structure rises above water level. Each Chinampa is about 300 feet long and 30 feet wide. They're separated by canals that serve as both irrigation channels and transportation routes. Canoes navigate between them like trucks on highways. The numbers here are staggering. Chinampas could produce 7 crops per year. 7. The lake mud constantly replenished nutrients, the water table was always right there, and the lake itself moderated temperature swings. This system feeds 200,000 people in the capital, plus surplus for tribute. It does this on what's essentially swampland. No oxen plowing fields, no irrigation wheels, just human labor building and maintaining artificial islands. Now extend that outward. The empire controls 489 city-states across central Mexico. Each one sends tribute to Tenochtitlan: cacao from the coast, jade from Guerrero, feathers from the tropics, cotton from Veracruz, obsidian from Pachuca. All of it has to move. And here's where the system gets interesting, because moving 400,000 tons of goods annually without wheels or animals means they built something else instead. Something that employed more people than the Roman road system and moved goods just as fast. But it had a weakness nobody saw coming. The tlameme. Professional porters. That's the backbone of the entire system. A tlameme carries a load in a wooden frame strapped across his forehead. Not his shoulders, his forehead, using a tump line that distributes weight down the spine. Maximum load, 50 pounds. Maximum distance per day, about 15 miles through mountain terrain. For comparison, a mule can carry 200 pounds, 4 times as much, and walk 20 miles a day. So on paper, one mule equals 4 humans, except mules need feeding. A working mule eats 20 pounds of grain and hay per day. In an agricultural system without plows or harvest machines, that's food diverted from humans. A human porter eats maybe 3 pounds of maize per day, which is food you're producing anyway. The math changes. In a labor-rich, animal-poor environment, humans are the efficient choice. But you can't just have random people carrying things. The Aztecs built infrastructure. Every 15 miles along major routes, a way station. Not just a rest stop, a facility with food storage, water, sleeping quarters, and fresh porters. The system works like a relay race. A load starts in Veracruz heading for Tenochtitlan, 250 miles away. It passes through 16 way stations. Different porters carry it at each stage. The load moves continuously. Total transit time, about 17 days. Fresh fish from the coast reaches Moctezuma's table in Tenochtitlan in less than 24 hours using relay runners. That's 250 miles in a day, on foot, through mountains. Roman couriers on horseback made about 50 miles per day on good roads. The Aztec relay system is 5 times faster. How many porters does this require? Conservative estimate? 200,000 tlameme in rotation across the empire. That's 4% of the total population in the logistics system. For comparison, the Roman Empire at its peak had about 250,000 soldiers manning the frontiers, roughly the same percentage of population. So back to that opening number, 400,000 tons. How do you move that much weight when every single item has to be carried by a human being? Here's the partial answer. They built an empire-wide logistics network that converted their abundance, human labor, into transportation capacity. Every city-state owed tribute not just in goods but in porter service. The system was mandatory, rotational, and sophisticated enough to track loads, routes, and delivery schedules across 80,000 square miles. But here's what that doesn't answer. What happens when you build an entire imperial system around technologies your enemies don't have and don't understand, and then those enemies show up with technologies you've never seen? Because in April 1519, something arrived on the coast that the relay runners couldn't outrun. 16 horses, 13 muskets, 4 small cannons, and 508 Spanish soldiers who had no idea they were about to exploit every single vulnerability in a system that had worked for 200 years. The causeway system that made Tenochtitlan defensible made it besiegeable. 3 roads in, 3 roads out. Pull up the wooden bridges and the city becomes a fortress. But it also becomes a trap. Cut the causeways and nothing gets in, including food. The Aztecs designed for raids and short wars between city-states. Nobody had ever besieged Tenochtitlan because nobody could sustain a siege. You'd need to surround a lake, blockade 3 causeways, and starve out 200,000 people while their armies sallied out to break you. Hernán Cortés did exactly that. For 93 days, starting May 26, 1521, he had 900 Spanish soldiers, maybe 200,000 Tlaxcalan allies who hated the Aztecs, and 13 ships he built on the lakeshore specifically to blockade the causeways from the water. The Chinampas that fed the city? Accessible only by canoe. Spanish ships controlled the lake. No food in. The Tlememe Porter system? Requires roads and way stations. Cortez held the causeways. No tribute arriving. The human labor system that moved everything? Smallpox hit Tenochtitlan in October 1520. Killed maybe 40% of the city, including Emperor Cuitlahuac. You can't run a labor-intensive empire when disease kills the labor force. And then there's the military mismatch. Obsidian-edged wooden swords, maquahuitl, could decapitate a horse in one swing. Spanish accounts confirm this. Obsidian is sharper than steel, but it shatters on impact with steel armor. Aztec weapons were designed to wound and capture, because the goal of Aztec warfare was taking prisoners for tribute and sacrifice, not killing enemies. Spanish warfare was about killing enemies. Horses, which the Aztecs had never seen before February 1519, functioned as shock cavalry. Not because they were faster or stronger than human runners, but because they were unfamiliar. The psychological effect lasted about 6 months. After that, Aztec warriors adapted and learned to target the horses first. But 6 months was enough. The siege ended August 13, 1521. Tenochtitlan fell. The empire collapsed in less than 2 years from first contact. Here's where this connects to today, and it has nothing to do with whether wheels are better than feet. It's about optimization. In 2021, a single container ship, the Ever Given, blocked the Suez Canal for 6 days. Global trade lost an estimated $9.6 billion. Why? Because modern shipping is optimized for efficiency through choke points. The Suez Canal handles 12% of global trade. One ship sideways, and the system stops. The Aztec causeway system was the same optimization. 3 roads handling 100% of the capital's supply. Incredibly efficient under normal conditions, fatal under siege. We do this constantly. In 2020, a semiconductor shortage cascaded through global supply chains because 63% of advanced chips come from Taiwan. One island, one choke point. In 2021, Winter Storm Uri knocked out Texas power for days because the grid was optimized for cost, not redundancy. No connections to neighboring grids, no winterization. One weather event, system failure. The Aztecs weren't primitive. They were optimized for their environment. Labor-rich, animal-poor, island capital, short wars. They built systems that worked brilliantly for 200 years, and then the environment changed. Different enemies, different diseases, different technologies. The optimization became the vulnerability. The Aztec Empire didn't collapse because they never invented the wheel. It collapsed because everything they built, every optimization, every clever workaround, was designed for a world that vanished the second 16 horses walked off those Spanish ships. Every technology is a trade-off. Every optimization is a potential failure point. History is an open book. Watch as we turn the pages and see the same pattern repeat. The Aztecs compensated for missing technologies through human systems. The Inca did something different. They built the largest road network in the Western Hemisphere without wheeled vehicles. But their solution created completely different vulnerabilities when the Spanish arrived in Peru. That's the next chapter. If you want to see how the same collision played out with different technologies and different outcomes, that video is up next. So don't ask which empire was more advanced. Ask which one built a system that couldn't survive contact with the other, and what that tells us about how empires actually fall.